Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for joining us. As our city faces the highest unemployment rate in the country and our nation deals with economic uncertainty, for a young person in Windsor, job prospects might feel grim. And it's not just a feeling. Numbers show that job hunting is tough on youth. Jason Vio digs into the latest research in tonight's top story.
Like many youth, I've experienced those challenges. The confusion of where to start.
Workforce Windsor Essex spent the last year gathering data and building new tools to better understand the local youth unemployment rate. Those new numbers show that in 2024, more than 18% of youth in Windsor didn't have a job. That's for people ages 15 to 24. It's also much higher than Windsor's overall unemployment rate in June of this year, which sits slightly above 11%, the highest in Canada. The new Windsor data also digs deeper into the unemployed youth. It shows that young men are much more likely to be unemployed compared to young women.
The industries that tend to hire youth are usually hiring women. So service industry, rec, restaurants, those kinds of jobs. We also found that men statistically and historically have more experience with substance abuse, mental health problems, housing. So all of these stability issues can contribute to the fact that they are not in employment as well.
Another thing pointed out is that the unemployment rate among Black and Arabic youth is much higher than the overall youth rate in Windsor. New Beginnings works directly with youth to help them find jobs, and they added a second employment counselor this year to help navigate the search.
We expect that employment is going to be something that empowers the youth and gives them confidence, and for them to be able to acknowledge that the skills that they have. And then when employment is such a barrier for them, it does become more of a burden and they don't feel that same confidence.
There's also a new website to help these young people find jobs. It's at workforcewindsoressex.com/YEP. There's a search bar that lets the user explore different career paths and also finds open positions by filtering experience, job types, and regions, and displays it on a map. The site also helps build resumes and cover letters. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
Some mobile home owners in Essex say they feel trapped in their homes, unable to sell because of growing lot rental fees scaring off potential buyers. Pratyush Thayal brings us the story.
It's really upsetting. It's sad.
That's how Sarah Battersby describes her experience trying to sell her mobile home. The single mother of two bought her modular home in this manufactured home community located at McGregor 3 years ago. Battersby was leasing the land on which her home was situated at about $675 a month. When Battersby went to sell last fall, she says the lot rent went up to $895. On top of that, a new maintenance fee of $140 a month.
My realtor has had people calling and just hanging up as soon as they hear the amount of land rent, because no one can afford it.
After lowering her asking price several times, she eventually surrendered the home to the bank in July. As she says, no one was willing to buy.
It feels really strange not being able to just go in and, sorry, it's upsetting, and not being able to go in.
Hi there, it's Sherry. I'm just calling about your listing on Cedar, wondering if you could give me a call back, please.
Mayor Sherry Bondi has been tracking declining home sales on leased lands. She says she's been hearing concerns from other mobile home communities too.
Because right now, if you're buying, you're in a lose-lose position, and if you're selling, you're in a lose-lose position. My feeling would be that this is happening in, all of Essex County, all of Ontario, probably all of Canada.
This resident says he's worried about unkept grass, potholes, and uneven sidewalks. But his biggest worry? Passing on the burden of an unsellable house.
I'm trapped. I can't sell the place. It won't sell. So when we pass on and my daughter takes possession, she's going to be stuck with a hell instead of being stuck with a benefit.
Hidden Creek is run by Sun Park Communities, which is a manufactured housing division of Toronto-based Firm Capital Properties. Firm Capital says it strictly adheres to the rules outlined in the Residential Tenancies Act of Ontario, and that they reserve the right to exercise their right to set rents accordingly.
I don't see how I'm going to get out of here. We're trapped. We are basically trapped in our homes.
Pratyush Dayal, CBC News, Windsor.
Colette Kennedy joins us now for our first look at weather. And hey, no heat warning today, Colette.
You're right, Katerina. Yep, Environment Canada, you were right. Pulled that right before midnight last night. So yeah, it was still a little bit warm and certainly in parts of the province, but not quite to that criteria. We're coming off of that and moving into a few days where things are a little more comfortable before the heat starts to tick back up once again. 29 degrees for the high today. There were 30s on the board, as you see. We do have some thunderstorms bubbling up very close by, so we'll take a closer look at this coming up. But overnight tonight, 16 degrees. Tomorrow afternoon, do you believe it? Yep, not 33, 23 for the high, Katerina.
Thank you so much, Colette. The province has officially canceled its $100 million contract with Starlink, but the government refuses to say how much it costs taxpayers to get out of the deal. Energy and Mines Minister Stephen Lecce did not answer numerous questions today about the kill fee the province will have to pay Elon Musk's SpaceX. The province first announced the deal last year to deliver high-speed internet to 15,000 residents in rural and northern Ontario. It was set to go live in June and would have covered hardware and installation costs, but not the monthly fees. But the Starlink contract came under fire as Musk became part of the inner circle of the Trump administration. Back in February, Ford promised to rip up the deal. The province says it is working on alternative solutions for internet in remote locations. Where in the world is Jimmy Hoffa? It is a question that has fascinated history buffs on both sides of the Detroit River for decades. And now, half a century after his disappearance, Dalson Chen revisits the case.
On July 30th, 1975, Teamsters Union President Jimmy Hoffa went missing in Detroit and was never seen again. 50 years later, one crime writer says he's certain of Hoffa's ultimate fate: meat for the grinder. According to Detroit's Scott Bernstein, who calls himself the leading expert on the Hoffa case, that's how a hitman disposed of Hoffa's remains. And Bernstein believes his theory is the most credible and corroborated yet.
This is the FBI's standing theory, that Tony Palazzolo was Jimmy Hoffa's killer, and that he did it at the behest of the Giacalone brothers. In 1993, where Tony Palazzolo was intercepted on an FBI wire, admitting to an undercover FBI agent that he was the person that killed Hoffa, and that, according to him, he had put Hoffa's body through a sausage auger. They accomplished the perfect murder, but it was almost too perfect. They did such a great job of getting rid of the body. There's still this interest to find the body.
It's been half a century and several generations since Hoffa's disappearance, but the mystery remains an enduring part of American culture. Maybe it's because the prevailing legend is that the mafia killed Hoffa and hid the body. The particulars have been subject to endless debate and speculation. Articles, books, podcasts, panels, and depictions in TV and film. But don't get Bernstein started about Martin Scorsese's 2019 film The Irishman, which showed mob enforcer Frank Sheeran, portrayed by Robert De Niro, as Hoffa's killer.
Irishman is historical blasphemy. In some ways, it's negligence, frankly, on the part of Scorsese and De Niro. I'm saying Frank Sheeran is a liar and has a reputation, or had a reputation, of being a loud, drunken storyteller.
Windsor writer Sarah Macri knows about the allure of the Hoffa case and the mafia in general. She said her debut novel, Overcoming Omerta, in 1950s mobland, the same milieu where Hoffa began his shady connections to organized crime. For Macri, the unsolved nature of the case and the many theories of what happened are what have fueled public interest.
I think someone who just disappears and there's no closure and there's just no real explanation, it just always fascinates the public. I think he tried to be a hero, but in the end, he made the wrong choices with the wrong people.
The FBI officially considers the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa to be an open case. Dalson Chen, CBC News, Windsor.
New numbers show Gen Z, the youngest generation that can invest money in Canada, is doing just that. In fact, they are investing more consistently than any other age group. Michelle Song has more on what's driving this financially savvy generation.
He's been posting videos for I think close to 5 years now.
23-year-old Arvin Farshad set up a tax-free savings account after watching influencers talk about it online.
They don't teach this type of stuff in school. They don't teach anything about TFSA or personal finances in school.
Farshad is part of Gen Z, people currently between the ages of 13 and 29. 68% of Canadian Gen Zers are investing consistently each year, at least 5% more than any other age group, according to a TD Bank survey.
They're the first generation that's really been truly immersed in social media. So for them, accessing information is second nature. I also think that this is a generation that's internalized some of the mistakes that other generations have made in the past.
I pay zero bank fees for my...
This content creator is one of many influencers giving financial advice on social media.
It's done in a way that is easier to digest and understand, and like concepts are broken down a little bit more, and it's not this like huge overwhelming task.
Young Canadians are turning to investing in the face of skyrocketing housing prices and a tough job market. Many are living at home longer and taking advantage of easy access investment tools.
Gen Z is kind of holding out saying, you know what, I don't care. I'm going to put my liquidity and my wealth in investment accounts where I can control it. And at least I can actually have some sort of say in what happens in my future.
I said this before and I'll say it again, but building wealth is actually really simple.
With so many influencers, not all advice is good advice, but Farshad thinks he's found the right information to secure his future.
Nothing is guaranteed, even for jobs, the housing market. So if you have that money in the reserve just for you to pull out from, it's always good to have that.
Banking is no longer just about walking in. It's right here in your hand. And that convenience is making it easier than ever for people to save and invest on the go. Michelle Song, CBC News, Toronto.
More than ever before, we rely on satellites up in orbit to support daily life down here on Earth. Canada has lagged behind other nations when it comes to space infrastructure, but that could soon be changing. Brett Ruskin has more on how the East Coast is wading into this space race.
10, 9,
Inside this rocket, a shoebox-sized satellite that took 2.5 years to build.
It's very exciting to see it go into space.
1, ignition. And liftoff of Falcon 9. Go, SpaceX, go, Transporter 14.
Liftoff was last month, and the satellite will soon capture images of Earth. But while many satellites snap pictures and send them back to the surface, this one uses AI to analyze them first.
If you can imagine taking pictures of the ocean, most of the cases you're just seeing water. Not important. So you don't want all that information to come back down. You're looking for specific surface vessels, for instance.
Identifying ships in the ocean or early signs of wildfire in the woods puts this Canadian company at the cutting edge of satellite technology. But for their launch, there was no Canadian way to get to space.
Right now, we built the spacecrafts here, but we have to launch them elsewhere.
That means relying on the United States.
So now we're #1 in space by a lot. It's not even close.
The strained Canada-U.S. relationship has some questioning that reliance.
You know, we went through that with COVID and the ability to produce vaccines and stuff, the sovereign capability for production of vaccines. It's that lesson, I think, that's very real, that has become more apparent in just the last 6 months.
He and his team are building a spaceport in Canso, Nova Scotia. It'll be like an airport for rockets, where companies can come to launch in a remote but well-supported location. They've already hosted small rockets. A company from Europe is coming to launch in October, and more are on the way.
They're drumming their fingers and they're waiting and they're ready.
So Canada has satellites, a launch pad. Now we just need a rocket. A handful of companies are spending millions to develop designs, including one planning a test launch next month in Newfoundland.
So that launch is a very important one, historic as well, but it's a low-altitude demonstration of our Taiga launch vehicle.
He says just like Canadians scoffed at becoming the 51st state, we should likewise defend our space sovereignty too.
Sovereignty is more important than ever, means that access to space is as well, just as important a domain as the land, sea, and the air.
That report from CBC's Brett Ruskin in Halifax. Let's take a live look outside. There's still a hot day today, but it is nice to be out of that heat warning zone, isn't it? Colette will have more on the days ahead later on in the program. But first, when we come back, the deadline for Canada and the United States to reach a trade deal is creeping up quickly. quickly. So we're going to take a look at where things stand with the negotiations. Plus, Canada is putting more pressure on Israel. That story coming up right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The clock is ticking down to the deadline for a trade agreement between Canada and the United States. President Donald Trump has said he'd impose a 35% tariff on some Canadian goods starting August 1st. Peter Armstrong looks at what might happen.
That August 1st deadline looms over everything here. It's set for Friday, and if Canada can't get a deal, Donald Trump has said he'll simply impose tariffs on Canada and not really negotiate at all. His Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, has said the deadline is firm, that there's no more pauses, exemptions. August 1st, he says, is the end of the road. And, well, that sounded good. His colleague, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, announced yesterday that he's negotiated a new 90-day pause in tariffs with China. So, as is almost always the case, things here pretty muddy in Washington, and into those muddy waters enters Dominic LeBlanc, the federal minister responsible for Canada-U.S. relations, and Canadian ambassador to the United States, Kirsten Hillman. a long-standing veteran of exactly this kind of uncertainty. They're here trying to pin down a deal, but it's trickier than just signing this particular deal. After all, the Canada-Mexico-US trade deal, that's set for sweeping renegotiations next year. So Canada's got to be careful that it doesn't agree to anything in this round of talks that could change the long-term prospects of that CUSMA renegotiation. And right now, of course, the Canadian government secured a pretty sweeping exemption of anything that's CUSMA compliant. The Bank of Canada says that covers like 95% of Canadian exports to the U.S. That's not to say there's not real damage being done. There is. It's the auto sector, the steel, aluminum, lumber industries. They're all getting clobbered. But for the most of the rest of the Canadian economy, the impact has been muted, and keeping that in place is going to be one of the biggest and most important things that LeBlanc and Hillman will be trying to do over the next couple of days ahead of that deadline. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Washington.
And with less than 2 days to go to make a trade deal, Prime Minister Carney gave an update on where the talks stand following a cabinet meeting.
With respect to the trade negotiations with the U.S., as you know, we're seeking the best deal for Canadians. We have not yet reached that deal. Negotiations will continue until we do. Minister LeBlanc and senior officials will remain in Washington in pursuit of that goal.
And amid the trade tensions with the United States, the Bank of Canada is holding its key lending rate steady at 2.75%. The announcement comes just ahead of that trade deal deadline, and Bank Governor Tiff Macklem says tariff uncertainty and unpredictable U.S. policy calls for flexibility.
The increases we've seen in U.S. effective tariff rates are less than what was threatened, but they are still outside post-war historical experience. But the unusual degree of uncertainty does mean we have to put more weight on the risks. We're looking at over a shorter horizon than usual, and we are ready to respond to new information.
Macklem says the central bank will be watching for how much tariffs will affect business activity and demand for Canadian exports, and whether higher costs from those import duties are passed on to customers. And Canada is upping the pressure on Israel. Prime Minister Mark Carney says this country intends to recognize Palestinian statehood in September. It follows similar moves by the UK and France in an effort to force an end to the fighting and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
Canada intends to recognize the state of Palestine at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in September 2025. This intention is predicated on the Palestinian Authority's commitment to much-needed reforms, including commitments by the Palestinian Authority's President Abbas to fundamentally reform its governance, to hold general elections in 2026 in which Hamas can play no part, and to demilitarize the Palestinian state.
In other news, thousands of fans of the godfather of heavy metal have paid their last respects to Ozzy Osbourne. Black Sabbath fans lined the streets of Birmingham, England, as his hearse made its way to a private funeral service. Osbourne grew up in the city, and it's where the band was formed in 1968. He found a new legion of fans in the early 2000s with the reality show The Osbournes. He starred alongside his wife Sharon and their two youngest children, Kelly and Jack. Osbourne died July 22nd at the age of 76. And we'll be back with Paula Kennedy right after the break with your weather. Stay with us. Colette Kennedy is back now for more on weather. And Colette, I know that you're keeping an eye on some possible showers coming through the area. So what should people know?
Yeah, we do have a few storms that are kind of bubbling up there stateside, but very close by. And we may see some of this go over into the evening hours and even a little bit past midnight. And then it's going to come and go as we'll have the system skirting through tomorrow. So I'll take you through all of that. I also just want to start you off with a look at those temperatures. Things going to be cooling down here through the overnight hours. I know it probably is kind of hard to believe, but yes, these humidex values in the mid and upper 30s, we'll get those relaxing a little bit and dropping off. So the main system is back here to the west, and it's actually going to kind of start to push a little more towards the southeast and skirt through. But what I did want to bring your attention to are some of these storms here just kind of bubbling up Toledo and just to the west of Windsor. And as they're coming together, they're sort of popping up, and then we'll see them push out towards the lake. But still, in between, little activity coming through Windsor and Leamington. Yes, that's certainly possible as we go through the next couple of hours, and then more development to come behind that, but there'll be some breaks in between as well. Now, just having a look at what's going on with these systems, and you see putting on what's going on with watches and warnings. This is actually not to do with any kind of severe thunderstorm watch or warning. It has to do with the air quality. And I did want to point that out because there's all the state of Michigan with an air quality statement, and then a good portion of Ontario, northeastern Ontario is as well. And what we're finding is some of that wildfire smoke from the prairies, as we're getting a new air mass moving in, is kind of rotating around and pushing back in towards Ontario. So even in southwestern Ontario tomorrow, you may find the quality deteriorating a little bit. So here's some of these storms sort of bubbling through the outliers ahead of the main system. And then it sort of comes through with more rain showers, skirts along the north shore of Lake Erie. And this is carrying on tonight into tomorrow morning. And then as that continues to push south and east, we should actually begin clearing out as we push towards the lunch hour and into the afternoon, getting into sunshine. And once we do, and that really settles in, we're going to have that for several days. So into the end of this week, but also into the long weekend as well. So tonight, hard to believe, but the temperatures are going to be coming down. Overnight lows getting back into the teens. Even tonight is 16, but look at this. Thursday night and Friday night down to 14 degrees. Tomorrow's high, 23. We might get to 24. Those showers early in the day and then pushing off. And then the temperatures will begin climbing again, Katarina, as we head into the weekend, but the humidity probably holds off to the second half of the long weekend.
Okay, thank you so much, Colette, and thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Good night.